Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Ward, and I work for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. I'm pleased to participate in this e-forum on transforming teacher education. IIEP have asked me to speak to you about what can we learn about the strengths and weaknesses of teacher education systems from large assessments. Now, there isn't time for me to do anything more than give you a brief introduction to this topic, but I hope that you'll follow up this presentation by going to the reading that I've recommended. And I also look forward to receiving your questions and comments on the forum. So, what can we learn about the strengths and weaknesses of teacher education systems from large-scale assessments? Let's start with assessment. Assessment is the process of gathering and evaluating information on what students know, understand, and can do in order to make an informed decision about next steps in the education process. There are different kinds of assessment, and they each address various purposes. The main kinds of assessment are classroom assessment, examinations, and large-scale assessment. And you can see in this slide some of the purposes of these assessments. Also, on the left-hand column, you can see 3 dimensions that are all important for the success of an assessment. You can see the enabling context, system alignment, and assessment quality. But today, I will highlight system alignment and say a few more words about that shortly. But now let's look at what a large-scale. So a large-scale assessment is a system-level assessment for monitoring and providing policymaker and practitioner relevant information on overall performance levels in the system. Also, it can look at changes in those levels and related or contributing factors. Large-scale assessments collect 2 kinds of data. First kind is student performance on a test, which you can see on the vertical axis in this picture. And the second kind of data is contextual data that can help to explain the student performance. And you can see that on the horizontal axis in this picture. Now, as you can see in this picture, the student's socioeconomic status is one of the most important contextual factors. And this is very strongly related to student performance. And generally, we find that in most education systems, the student's socioeconomic status is the strongest predictor of student performance. And education policy and teacher education policy is mainly concerned with raising and leveling what we call the learning bar, which is the slope that you can see on that picture. So let me now move to the subject of international large-scale assessments. And in the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to talk about international large-scale assessments, and particularly the one called PISA. And I recommend to you our recent review of the international large-scale assessments that we published last year. This is the first of 3 readings that I am recommending for you. So there are quite a few international large-scale assessments, and I'll describe some of them for you now. So at the international level, we have PEARLS, PISA, TIMSS, STEP, LAMP, PIAC, WISPS, and EGRA. These have all had a global presence over the last 2 decades. But there are also international large-scale assessments that operate on a regional level. So we have LESE in Latin America, SACMAC in Central and Southern Africa, PASAC in the Francophonie, the Western Africa, OASO in Eastern Africa, ASA, which began in India but is now spreading to other countries, and the Southeast Asia Primary Learning Measurement Tool, SEAPLM, in Southeast Asia. System level assessments, but have the added purpose of national comparison. That is comparing the performance of one country's education system with another country or groups of countries. All of these international large-scale assessments share the same 14 key features, and you can see them here in this picture. We don't have time to go through all of these features, but if you are interested to explore them, please do have a look at that publication I have recommended for you as part of the forum. I'll just highlight 4 features that are relevant to our focus on teacher education. First, the assessment framework, which addresses fundamental questions about the assessment and really clarifies the purpose of the assessment in terms of what the policy focus is. Second, the cognitive instruments. So these typically are tests of reading and mathematics, or sometimes science. Third, the contextual instruments. So usually the student questionnaire, teacher questionnaire, sometimes a parent questionnaire, and a school questionnaire. And again, these are critically important for the purpose of the assessment, the policy focus, particularly if we're interested in learning about teachers, student learning, and the implications for teacher education. And fourth of these 14 features that I'd highlight for you is the reporting and dissemination, because of course these large-scale assessments are only useful if the reports of them and the dissemination of the results reaches the right people, policymakers in ministries of education and decision makers in teacher education, and increasingly, of course, teachers themselves. So let me just touch on this issue of system alignment that I mentioned earlier. This refers to the extent to which the assessment is aligned or coherent with other components of the education system. And this includes the connection between assessment activities and system learning goals, plus also standards, curriculum, and for our topic today, pre- and in-service teacher training opportunities. And you remember that I said system alignment is one of those 3 main dimensions of assessment. So this publication I'm showing you now, the experience of middle-income countries participating in PISA, it's not my recommended reading for you, but if you want to read further, I would ask you to look at this publication to explore these issues of alignment in the middle-income countries that have taken part in PISA. So let me now give you the example of PISA, and through PISA, show you what we can learn about teachers and teacher education systems from international large-scale assessments. So PISA has been going since 2000, and every 3 years, a sample of 15-year-old students around the world sit a test, and this aims to measure how well their education system has prepared them for life after compulsory schooling. PISA stands for the Programme for International Student Assessment, and this assessment is managed by the OECD, who I work for, in partnership with national centres and leading experts from around the world. And in 2018, we will have over 90 countries and economies taking part in PISA, and it covers mathematics, science, and reading. So let's move into the discussion of what we can learn about teacher education systems from PISA. So the way that we learn is through the student background questionnaire and teacher questionnaire, information about students and teachers' experiences in their classes. This contextual information is coupled with the student's result on the assessment. So you'll recall that earlier slide where I showed you how on the vertical axis we have student performance, and on the horizontal axis we have the contextual factors. And this allows us to examine how certain teaching and learning strategies are related to performance in mathematics, reading, and science. Our analysis provides constructive feedback to governments about how teachers are teaching and students are learning that informs the development of teacher education systems, both pre-service and in-service. Now, I'm going to present to you some examples of the kind of analysis that we can do related to teachers teaching, students learning, and the implications for teacher education. Now, all of these examples are drawn from our PISA in Focus publications. And these publications are the second of my recommended readings for you. So here is an example of something we can learn from PISA, this time about potential recruits for teacher education programs. OECD countries, 5% of students expect to work as teachers, 3% of boys and 6% of girls. The academic profile of students who expect to work as teachers varies, but in many OECD countries, students who expect to work as teachers have poorer mathematics and reading skills than other ambitious students who expect to work as professionals, but not as teachers. PISA shows that on average, a higher percentage of students as teachers in countries where teachers' salaries are higher. So the higher the teacher's salary, the more likely the higher percentage of students that would want to work as a teacher. Here is another example from PISA that we can look at. So this is also relevant for teacher pre-service and in-service training. Do teacher-students relations affect students' well-being at school? And what we find is that 4 out of 5 students in OECD countries agree or strongly agree that they feel happy at school, that they feel like belonging at school. And teacher-student relations are strongly associated with both performance in mathematics and students' happiness and sense of belonging at school, as you can see in the chart in front of you now. Across OECD countries, 71% of students attend school whose principals reported that teachers value the social and emotional development of their students as much as their students' academic proficiency. So these are strong messages for teacher educators. Here is another example of what PISA can tell us, this time about school discipline, of course, also relevant for teacher education, teacher training. Students who reported that there are few disciplinary problems in their classes perform better in PISA than those who reported that a lack of discipline in class disrupts learning. Between 2000 and 2009, classroom discipline improved in many countries that participate in PISA, and the majority of students in OECD countries enjoy orderly lessons. Generally, what we find is that countries where discipline in the classroom improved between 2000 and 2009 are also those where students reported better relations with their teachers. So that key aspect of student-teacher relations and discipline in the school. Again, some key messages there for teacher educators and teachers. And then, of course, we look at whether students perform better in schools with orderly classrooms. Now, what we found in PISA is that most students in the PISA participating countries enjoy orderly classrooms for the language of instruction lessons. But what we do find is that socioeconomically disadvantaged students are less likely to enjoy orderly classrooms than advantaged students, so a key equity issue. Classrooms, regardless of the school's overall socioeconomic profile, are related to better performance. So again, another key message for this. PISA also helps us to understand something about teacher selection and professional development in high-performing countries. The higher the entry requirements to the teaching profession, the better the students' performances. And this holds across all the countries taking part in PISA. It's also the case that in-house, so in school, professional development of teachers is strongly associated with higher student performance. Now, PISA also enables us to learn about teaching and learning in particular disciplines. The example I'm sharing with you now now is mathematics. This publication that you can see, 10 questions for mathematics teachers and how PISA can help answer them, is the third of the readings I have recommended for you. Now, this report comes from 2016 and took the findings from PISA 2015, and organized them into 10 questions that discuss what we know about mathematics teaching and learning around the world, and how these data might help teachers and teacher educators in their mathematics. Now, this is a very significant report, and it's very rich, and I can only give you a flavor of the kind of things that it talks about in the few minutes that we have together today. But let me concentrate on what we know from this report in terms of teaching and learning strategies in mathematics from around the world. So let's look first at teacher-directed instruction and the use of student memorization in the classrooms. And so we can see that the teacher-directed instruction is fairly strong in East Asian education systems, but not perhaps as strong as some people might have expected. And that teacher-directed instruction is most frequently used in countries Ireland, France, Hungary, and Croatia, which some people may find a little surprising. And that memorization is most frequently used compared to, say, elaboration strategies in the countries that you can see there. Many of them, the sort of Anglophone countries, United States, New Zealand. So we can learn a lot from PISA about different teaching and learning strategies and how these are related to student performance. And I'll say a few more about these strategies now. So this strategy for memorization is about students learning something completely so that it can later be recalled or repeated. In mathematics classes, teachers often encourage students to use their memories through activities such as rehearsal, routine exercises, and drills. And as you can see, in countries where teachers are using this strategy, there is a strong correlation with higher performance. So now let's look at another strategy, control strategies. So here, with control strategies, teachers are allowing students to set their own goals and track their own learning process, helping learners control their own learning, i.e. through organizing material, creating a study plan. It is related to concepts such as efficiency, strategic learning, self-regulation, and metacognition. And as you can see in this example, students who try to work out what the most important parts to learn are through these control strategies are tending to perform better on the maths test than others. So here's another strategy, elaboration. And this chart that you can see here describes teachers and their use of elaboration strategies. So elaboration strategies meaning teachers are unpacking problems in the classroom for their students and with their students. And what we can see is that this chart shows that there are more that these strategies of elaboration are more successful as maths problems become more difficult. And then here is another teacher strategy for mathematics. And here we can see the performance of the students is related to the extent to which teachers encourage students to acquire deep knowledge through instructional practices such as giving students problems that require them to think for an extended time, presenting problems for which there is no immediately obvious way of arriving at a solution, and helping students to learn from the mistakes they have made. So again, these cognitive activities also strongly related to higher than average performances in mathematics. The contextual questionnaires combined with the student performance also help us to explore attitudinal issues. So here we can see an example which I think really is a very strong message for teachers and teacher education, that girls are more anxious about mathematics than boys. And this is borne out across all of the countries participating in PISA. So those are some examples of what we can learn about teaching and learning and the implications for teacher education systems from PISA. And all of this incredibly rich data that I have presented to you, PISA, you have noted that this data includes not just the OECD countries, but also more than 40 middle-income countries. Now, to make PISA more relevant to middle-income and low-income countries, we've developed the PISA for Development initiative. As you can see from this slide, 9 countries are participating in PISA for Development, and we will be making the PISA for Development instruments available to a wider range of countries as part of PISA 2021. And we hope through this that more low-income and middle-income countries will join us in PISA from 2021. Now, if you are from a country that is not already in PISA, I would encourage you to explore with your ministries of education the possibility of joining in these next few years. So I hope I have shown you that we can learn a great deal about teaching and learning from large-scale assessments that is relevant for teacher education systems. The managers of teacher education systems can learn from this analysis the outcomes of different teaching strategies and teacher behaviors and address these weaknesses and behaviors or areas for strengthening through teacher education and training programs. And we find that this is happening in many of the PISA participating countries. They are taking this analysis from PISA and applying it in their teacher education and their teacher training programs. Of course, large-scale assessments can't give you the answers to all of your questions, and they do need to be complemented by other tools, such as teacher survey data. And one of these large-scale teacher surveys, international surveys, is the OECD's TALIS, the Teaching and Learning International Survey. And this kind of survey can help to deepen understanding with its focus on how countries can prepare to the diverse challenges in today's schools. So thank you very much for listening to this brief introduction to what we can learn from large-scale assessments regarding teaching and teacher education. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and that you are stimulated to review the 3 readings that I have recommended, and to ask questions and to make comments on the forum. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you again.